And on this question, we've got a picture drawn for us. And as we read it, we've got Tanner's a welder, designs and makes lawn and garden items, and he wants to make this cylindrical planter. The planter is supposed to be 30 inches high. So what we can do is on our diagram, we can label that this side is 30 inches with a 16-inch diameter. So we can draw all the way across and label that as 16 inches. Determine the amount of tin that he's going to need. So first of all, we have to decide what sides are going to get tin. If he's making a planter, well, obviously there's going to need to have tin around it, and you're going to need to have tin on the bottom, but will you have tin on the top? No.
50 kilometers.
So,
I don't know. Oh, okay.
so for part A, remember when we opened up a cylinder, we got a rectangle, a circle for the bottom, and we also had a circle for the top, but this time we don't need that circle at the top, so we can erase it. Another thing I want you to see is when I open this up, if I cut right along this blue line, then when I open it up, this red part here is this length right here. What part of the circle is that red part? It's the circumference. We have on our first formula sheet 2 formulas for circumference. The formula that we'll probably use in this case is circumference is pi times diameter. This length here is still 30 inches, and the diameter of this circle is 16 inches. Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you do, because it's technically a rectangle, that's just going around it, right?
Yeah.
So could you do 30 times, oh wait, then you would need the other side.
We need the other side, but you're right. In order to find the area of that rectangle, we need that red side. But that red side is going to just be, if we look at the picture here, that red side is the circumference of our circle.
Okay, well,
So if we figure out our circumference of our circle by going pi times diameter, so I go to my calculator.
wouldn't you just do 30 times 16?
So I do 3.14 times 16, and I get that red line is 50.27 inches long. So now I could write that in right here, 50.27 inches. Now I can find the area of that rectangle, because that rectangle is going to be 30 times 50.27, and it's going to be 1,508.1 inches squared. That's just the rectangle. From our formula sheet as well, we know that the area of a circle is pi r squared. And so if we look at our circle, and I'll color this circle in green, because that's the one we're figuring out with our green marker. If I want to find the area of that circle, I have to go to my calculator, I have to go pi times, and our radius is going to be half of our diameter, pi times 8 squared. So I type that into my calculator, and I get 201.1. So if we need to find the total surface area of this shape in inches squared, we could add those two together and we get 1,508.1, because that's the rectangle, plus 201.1. Add those up, we get 1,709.2 inches squared. That'll be our surface area. So that's using the strategy of opening up, like taking off the wrapping paper. If we imagine it had wrapping paper on it, you would have a circle at the bottom. The rectangle is what would go around the cylinder. And this time we don't have a circle at the top because it's an open planter that needed to be filled in. We have a formula on our formula sheet, and so this will be method 2. If we wanted to use our formula, we look at our formula sheet and we find a cylinder on there. There's a picture of a cylinder. And on our formula sheet it says that our surface area, got H here and R there. Our surface area of our cylinder is 2 pi r h plus 2 pi r squared. Now if we put the numbers into the formula, we're going to notice something here. So let's say we put all of our numbers. We know that our height is 30 inches. We know that our radius is 8. Our radius is 8, our height is 30. So if we So let's say I go to my calculator and I type in all of that and I push enter. I notice that my answer is different. I get 1,910.1 when it's rounded. Okay? Why is my answer different? Well, one, if you use a formula and you use the net, it should come out to the same answer. The reason it's different is when we use our formula for surface area of a cylinder, it includes the circle at the bottom, it includes the entire side, and it includes the circle at the top. But in our example, we don't have that circle at the top. So if you want to use the formula, your formula will count the bottom 2 circles and the side. So if you want the formula to give you the right answer in this case, you'd have to take the answer we got and we would have to subtract one of the circles. So if I take 1910.1 and I subtract one of the circles, and we already figured out up here that one of the circles is 201.1. And I subtract those, I get 1,709 inches squared. So now our answer is basically the same as the answer we had before. The only difference is a decimal place, and that can happen because of our rounding that we did earlier. So if you want to use the formula, you have to remember that the formula on your formula sheet does the sides and both the top and the bottom circle. And sometimes you might want to find the surface area of a cylinder without a top of the circle if it was going to be open. So then you have to be aware that you'd have to subtract something from your original formula. Now in part B, it says if it's 1,709 inches squared, how much is that in square feet? So now it's a proportion question that we had before. We want to find out how many feet squared is equal to 1,709 inches squared. We go to our formula sheet, and on our formula sheet it tells us that 1 foot squared is the same as 144 inches squared. So if we multiply both sides by 1,709, we find out that it is 11.87 feet squared. Okay, so here's one for you to try. They want you to calculate the surface area of this shape. It does have the circle on the top and the bottom. So if you want to go right to your formula will give you the right answer if you plug it in. I think using your formula is probably the easiest because you have it on your formula sheet and then you can adjust from there. If you're opening it up with a net, it gets a little bit difficult sometimes because you have to remember about the circumference. But if you can remember that, that's great. So try this one on your own. So we go to our formula sheet, and if you're going to use a formula, the first thing to do is to write out your formula. This formula for surface area will give the side of your cylinder plus the circle at the top plus the circle at the bottom, which is what we want to find. And now, after you've written out your formula, you can replace each of the things, the radius and the height, with numbers. So we look at here and we see our radius is 3. So wherever we had a 3, an r in our formula, we replace that with a 3. And our height is 2. So wherever we had an h in our formula, we replace it with 2. So now I'm going to calculate, this is 2 times pi times 3 times 2. I'm going to put that into my calculator, and that part is 37.7 plus, and here 2 times pi times 3 squared. I'm going to type that into my calculator, and that is 56.5. And I'll add 37.7.
Where'd you get 37.7?
I did 2 times pi times 3 times 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll add that to my 56.5, and I get my final surface area is 94.2 meters squared.